Hi, you're very welcome to this session of our group Akashic Records. It's great to see you guys here. And we've been getting a few questions in advance of this. And interestingly, a number of them are revolving around the theme of love. And I'm going to, hi Kim, I'm just doing a little introduction here. And it's interesting that it should be about love because a number of years ago, we created a little, I suppose you could call it a handout or a little flyer called What is Love? And it was the answers from the Akashic Records about love. And it really went into some fascinating ideas about what love is and what love isn't. But we'll see anyway what happens when we go through the session today, because there are a few questions about love. But the other thing is that I would like to send this to you guys because it's quite fascinating and also somewhat pertinent to what's going on in the world these days. So, all right.
Is there something going on in the world today?
No, it is all in the
There's nothing going on in the world today.
Hi, Margaret.
No problem. Nothing's going on.
Yeah.
Morning, Margaret.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. That's right. Yes. You must be what, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock?
7.
Oh, 7. Gosh.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah. Good for you. Thank you for joining us. Well, Aingeal Rose's, you know the procedure. She's going to say a prayer that will get us into the Akashic Records. And just a reminder that these sessions, you well know by now that they're not for personal questions. They're for like group world questions. And so we look forward to getting through a few of these today. So do you want to go ahead, Aingeal Rose?
Sure. So we got a lot of emerald green light today, which of course is a healing color. So what that tells me is there's healing going on or being sent to the earth.
Yeah. I got a couple of images which I found interesting. And one was that it's like that part of our belief systems, and we're talking about kind of world belief systems, not just our own. It was an image of a hook. And it was, you know how sometimes a fish can slip off the hook. So it's like as if things were just hanging on by a little hook and it could slip off at some point in time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It means that things are hanging on by a thread, more or less. That's the kind of thing. But I also saw not so much the green light, but the assistance. I saw it coming from like stars. I don't know what stars they were, but it appeared that there was assistance of some kind. Could be energetic, could be light, could be frequency, whatever, but it was coming from stars. Okay, so let's begin. Do you want to start, Terry? Do you want to ask any questions?
Yes. I have about 3 or 4 questions about mermaids and mermen. Okay, what are their origins? Are they genetically modified humans? And where do they live? Like in the deep parts of the ocean, like the Marianas Trench, which is like a couple of miles down deep. And also, what is their family structure?
Great. We haven't had questions like that before.
I was going to say, ask my granddaughters.
Yes, right. Yeah.
They were just talking about having a party, a mermaid party. Okay. Okay, so just a second. Their origin. Let's go there first, okay? Well, it doesn't look like they're a genetic modification. I don't see that they're genetically modified. It looks to me that they're part of ocean creatures. And you could say that some of them have already been a human in other lifetimes and have decided to become mermen and mermaids in a different life cycle. I feel they live deep in caves under the water, okay? So it probably could involve that trench you're talking about, Terry, but also a lot of other places that have deep caves deep under the ocean. And there's whole families of them. Let me see what that family structure is like. Kind of reminds me of fairies in a way. Okay, the way they're very communal. Okay, looks like they look out for each other. It looks like they have a hand in kind of, what is it when you take care of the ocean underneath? Like, so you make it so fish can live and everything. Okay. The environment. You make sure the environment is, as much as they can, is conducive to life in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
Okay, does seem too that there are tunnels under the ocean that they swim through, because it looks like they're not limited, like mermaids in the Atlantic Ocean wouldn't be limited to the Atlantic Ocean, for example. Like all those oceans are connected. And there's even deeper oceans under the surface that we don't know about, okay? So they look like they're a very ancient race. Very rarely appear on the surface to humans. Maybe a diver might notice one underneath, but it's very rare that they would appear.
It's funny that when you said about an ancient race, it makes sense now that I saw something from the stars, because it's like as if they were from the stars initially. And when you asked about the family structure, I saw it as being colored. Like, you know how it's hard to describe because it's an imprint. You know how if you mix red and blue, you get, or yellow, and you get different colors from mixing primary colors. So to me, their family structure looked like the genetics come from the mixing of different light colors, forming new colors. And that seems to be how they procreate.
They also communicate through the wind. In other words, you wouldn't hear a mermaid communicate with you telepathically, for example. It looks like they speak on the wind. So you'd have to develop an ear for recognizing that and listening to that. But it's much like we would see in the movies when they have a movie about a siren, for example, right? And there's an interesting sound that comes along the wind.
Yeah.
Okay, but it looks like that is how they communicate, through sound on the wind.
Yeah. It reminds me of a great movie we saw one time that was made in Ireland, I think on the web. Did you see it, Margaret? Did you send us a link to it one time? It was some movie about a mermaid on the west coast of Ireland desiring to becoming human for a short time, or something of that nature.
The sea, when she was a selkie.
A selkie, yeah.
Yes.
Was that basically?
Yeah, we saw that one. She did send it. We saw that when we were in Ireland.
No, I know we saw it a long number of years ago, but I think recently you did point it out.
We talked about it recently. Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was on the telly here.
Can I cover all those questions, Terry?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay, Diane, do you have any questions for Aingeal Rose today?
I think yes. On porn, how porn affects the planet.
Oh, do you have 3 hours? Okay, just a second. Well, porn is another form of implantation. The source had addressed this many years ago with us, that porn basically implants you sexually for other negative beings to come in and suck off your sexual energy, basically. And it made the point that even looking at a pornographic magazine implants you. So movies, magazines, acting it out, invite all sorts of nasty kind of entities. I'd say that it's definitely a negative program, one that's meant to seduce your energy, basically, so that you end up being siphoned off by other entities that are not so nice either. Okay. Okay, so basically sources always advise us that it's not something healthy, really, that it's implantation. I mean, the desire for its implantation, the drive for it is implantation, the acting out of it is implantation. Implantation by not so nice entities, okay?
I think also it binds us to the physical body in a way that we shouldn't be bound. There's more to it than that, but that's what I feel. It's like being handcuffed.
Well, what it does is give expression to people's shadow. That's the other part, okay?
Right.
And you have to really know yourself very well to be understanding what kind of shadow you're being attracted to when you get into porn. It's an addictive form of implantation and it's not a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Did that answer it, Diane?
Yes, thank you. Good information. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Shirley. So her first question was, what is Source's definition of love? And then what is the sound of love in the new earth?
So I did ask this question this morning again, after you asked it. And basically Source said, love is the field of all possibilities. So I guess from that, it really is that it is an unlimited essence that allows everything to come into being. So one level you could say it's the cause of creation. Another level you could say it's unlimited, it has no limits, it has no opposites either. And Source says it doesn't have a sound because if it gave it a sound, it would be limiting it. But you could say that it's all sounds. Okay, all sounds come from love. Okay, so let me just ask about the new earth, just because you asked about it. Just a second. See, we will recognize the new earth, not so much by a song or a sound, but really our perceptions will change and become much more unlimited and much more all-encompassing, much more communicative and cooperative. So it's like the essence of love will be demonstrated more in the new earth, and our perceptions will change because of it. Okay. But basically Source would say all music and all sound comes from love, and it's not limited to any particular frequency.
Okay. Marie, do you have a question?
Okay. My question is, how do we receive energy from God to sustain us? I mean, like so we don't have to eat food or anything like that. How can we make that happen? Or can we?
Great question. Very good question.
Well, we published a book by a man called Ray Mayor, Raymoar.
M-A-O-R.
M-A-O-R. And it was called A Year Without Food. Ray Mayor is a breatharian. He teaches workshops around the world to become breatharian. But in this book, he describes the pros and cons of moving from eating food to living off light, basically, living off prana. Yes, it is possible to do that. It's a matter of undoing all of your belief systems that say you have to have food. But it is possible to do. Like Ahonu and I were going to take his course years ago, but he wouldn't let me come because I'm diabetic, and he told me I'd have to not use medicines through the weekend. I'm not in a position to do that right now. Okay, but anyway, but he does workshops. In fact, he did one in Sedona, I think a couple of years ago, and my girlfriend went to it. And it's a lot of fasting in the beginning, water fasting, and then just juice fasting. But through the weekend, you do work with your beliefs about food, and you watch what comes up in you, because really everything's beliefs. Everything that we experience is a result of some belief somewhere. So the same is true about our thoughts about needing food, because maybe we could find that YouTube video and send it to them. That documentary he did where he was.
Oh, yeah.
He actually did a YouTube thing where he had all kinds of doctors watching him, and he was secluded in a house, and he couldn't have any food or water. And they even measured the water that he brushed his teeth with. So he had to brush his teeth and then spit it back out in the glass.
Yeah, because they regarded anything as being nutrients that might take from the accuracy of the study. I mean, they measured his urine, they measured anything that he was taking in, and anything that was excreting. They measured absolutely everything. It was quite fascinating, actually.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the doctors were sure that he'd die. I think it was 10 days, wasn't it?
Yeah.
10 days without food or water. They were for sure that all this stuff would happen to him. All these body systems would fail. And they would take his blood every day. And as it turned out, he was healthier than people who eat food, even after the 10 days.
Yeah.
So anyway,
there was one period of time where there was, it went a little bit dodgy, and the doctors were worried because they actually thought he was going to die, but then he completely recovered out of it, and they had no explanation as to why that was. I think it was like day 6 or day 7 or something. It was very interesting. And that was also, that documentary was paid for and ran by the Israeli television authority.
But it's interesting because he proved basically that we can live off prana, which is the light from source. Okay. You can do it, but like I say, the biggest program we have really around food is our social stuff, where we get together for meals with friends, and we share, and we have families over. And so for him, he did say it was very weird because his friends would all be eating pizza and this and that and the other, and they'd ask him to have some, and he'd say, no, thank you. And they thought they didn't understand of course, they didn't know what he was doing at first, But he said that's really the most difficult part, because now he's got a wife and a child. And he said it's very difficult not to share meals with them. So, yeah. In fact, it's we'll send you the link to the book, and we'll also send you his YouTube video, because he explains a lot of it in there. Okay.
Yes, yeah. There's one other thing about that too. I remember when my children were small and I was vegetarian, and they all wanted chicken nuggets and all kind of meat products and stuff, and I found it very difficult to not eat meat at that time, because the rest of the family was eating meat, but I wasn't. And in the same way, when you think about it, if you're not eating anything and you're living off prana, it is very difficult to be in this world, in the sense that everybody else is doing it, and that's how things are done. But that also shows that it is very much conditioning and perception, and that it can be done. But it's like as if you need a collective consciousness almost to move, that would help everybody move. So does that make sense?
Yeah, proved you can do it regardless, You know what I mean?
Okay.
Thank you. That I was just wondering, how would you do that, So
He basically says too, when you eat strictly from prana, like he talks about how your urine changes and what comes out of it at first when you stop eating food. And then he talks about how you start to have very high spiritual experiences because there's nothing in the way, basically. So you're in direct communication with source energy.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was a great question. Okay, you're up.
Hi, everybody. I was wondering about when hereditary illnesses or ancestral illnesses, are those carried down through genes, or is that a belief? Oh, my grandmother had it, so I'll have it. My mom had it, so I'll have it. So I'm trying to delineate if it is what it is.
So source is saying yes and yes. Okay. Yes, it's handed down genetically, and yes, it's a belief. But behind it is always some sort of emotional trauma. So you'd have to start exploring what's the emotional trauma behind blank, 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 whatever the illness is. Like I have diabetes from my great grandparents, but I've never really, the most I could say is that they came through the depression, that they were, the type of people who everything was made by hand. They had their root cellar, grandma made her own juice, blah, 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 but they weren't happy people. They were kind of depressed people. And I think that's part of the underlying issue, that they came through a depressing time and they still maintain that kind of poverty consciousness throughout the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it manifests as beliefs, it manifests as genes, but genetics are beliefs. And there's an emotional trigger behind every illness.
Yeah. If I could add to that too, and Margaret, I know, will identify with this. there's a guy who I know we both follow, who's a great writer. Thomas Sheridan is his name. And he wrote something last week where he said that a lot of the people who are resisting the power and control issues that are going on today are the very people who went through ancestral trauma. And in particular, he mentioned about the potato famine in Ireland, about how the British perfected a system of controlling a whole nation of people through power and control and manipulation, and controlling their food source and controlling their belief systems. And then went on to say that, you know, the US did exactly the same thing with Native American Indians, but it's all over the world. Various countries, like the Portuguese and the Spanish with the Mexicans and all of that, it's all over the world, it's pervasive. But his interesting point was that it's the ones who have that ancestral memory that are coming through the genetics who somehow remember and who are now saying, we've done this before and we're not doing it again. And in that way, I think there is definitely something about genetics when it comes to illnesses as well. So I think,
But
like
you
Aingeal
can undo it. You can undo the
that's the
program.
thing.
In other words, genetics aren't the death sentence. You know, it's not a given
Okay.
that because you have a genetic predisposition to something that you're going to manifest it. You can undo it.
Yeah.
You know, so because it has a belief attached to it, you can undo the belief in your own consciousness, and you can undo the emotion and write a new program.
Yeah.
For yourself.
Did we have an example of that, Aingeal Rose, when we were living in Ireland and there was some negativity about the place, whatever it is? You know how some people can feel energetic imprints and so on. So anyway, we walked around this particular place and we found that there was a soldier had been killed there.
Oh yeah, that was on our property here.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Mhm.
Now, when I say a soldier, that sounds like modern times. No, this is going back perhaps 1,000 years, 11, 12, 1,300 years. A warrior. And in fact, we made a video about it. And let me remind myself to send you that too.
You guys are going to have a shitload of
Yeah.
links to listen to.
Well, we called it When a Warrior Falls.
Yeah.
Yeah. When a Warrior Falls. And what it was about was that a warrior fell in battle on that particular land. And the imprint of that tragedy, that trauma, was still right there. It was in front of these people's house, actually. And the imprint was still there, almost as if it was like a hole.
A big dark hole.
A big dark hole. And so Aingeal Rose and I, we went about, with the family, we went about clearing it. And
well, the interesting way Source told us to clear it, because it was a circular driveway, was that we were to walk counterclockwise around the driveway as if we were walking back into the past.
Yes.
Right. And what this soul wanted, it wanted acknowledgement, first of all, because it basically said when a warrior falls, the first thing he thinks of is his mother and that he failed. Okay, but the point is that in order to clear his soul from this property, we had to walk counterclockwise. I forgot how many times around the circle.
I think it was 3.
And undo the past. And then we had to walk forward clockwise in order to bring him up into the present. Because what he wanted from the family who lived there is he wanted acceptance and acknowledgement. Of course, all the family came out of the house when we were doing that, because we were doing,
during the
in fact, our friend Jamie, who belongs to that family, came out and joined us. And it was the most miraculous thing. You could actually feel the unwinding and the going forward with the energy and bringing it up to the present.
Yeah.
And what they did was they created a little altar to him after that with a candle that they kept lit every night.
Yeah.
And it was quite a beautiful thing. It really was.
Yeah. And I think,
so what does that have to do with genetics, though?
Well, why I think, Kim, that's a very important question, is because I think right now, what we're doing, and I don't mean Aingeal Rose, I mean the world population right now, and each generation is healing our ancestral past. So we're healing those genetics, we're healing those illnesses, and we're healing the stuff that caused trauma that is necessary to heal in order to move it into a new earth. So it's a very important question you're asking, and I think it's done through ancestral healing. But I mean, of course, first healing ourselves. By healing ourselves, we're doing that. Yeah. So Ellen's question is, how can I undo the fear of starvation? Let me just check what the rest of the question was so I get it in its totality. She said, how do I undo the fear of starvation? I remember a past life from the Irish famine. I have to keep the refrigerator stocked and buy in quantity. I need to heal my ancestral past. Good point. Very good point. Yeah. Because if you think about it, Ellen, that's what's going on a lot of times in the world too, right now, where they're imposing fear of food shortages and supply chain problems and all, and they're stirring that ancestral memory. So much so that we're saying, oh yeah, I remember this. This has happened before.
So I'm going to refer to the Course in Miracles to answer this one, Ellen, because there's a lesson in the Course that I forgot which lesson it is, but basically when you're afraid of anything, it has you make a list and say, in this situation, in your case involving starvation, I am afraid, and then you make your list of what you're really afraid of it, okay? After you write all that out, then you end it with, but I could choose peace instead of this. I mention it because it's an easy thing to do, and it's very powerful, because what I found from the Course in Miracles is that it erases things on a quantum level. I mean, I've had situations completely disappear from my mind because I did that. But you have to want to choose peace about it, okay? So make your list. In this situation involving starving to death, I am afraid blank will happen. And just make your list. And then at the end and say, but I could choose peace instead of this. And just see what happens, okay?
Yeah, good question. Okay, Margaret, I've no doubt you're going to have a poem of questions for us today.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well,
Okay.
you're allowed one, Margaret.
Cheeky. It'll be about 10 foot long. I've sent you an email about DNA as well. Okay. You may or may not have had time to have a look at the link I sent you to the remote viewing and Cliff High chat, where they are definitely predicting something major coming sometime in the next few months. But they also think that the shock that it would create how can I put it? They're saying that they can prevent the event, and the shock will come from the people who caused the event being outed. And I guess what I want to know is, are they right? Can we stop it? Because it's going to be look natural, be creative, but can we stop that from happening by knowing about it and outing them and trying to be positive?
Okay, we're going to skip over you just for a minute, Margaret, because one of the questions we asked will take care of what you just asked, okay?
Loved and abandoned.
Just a second. Okay?
No. A lot of times,
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Ignore me.
seriously though, what we have
Yeah.
found always through the years is a lot of times when Source answers a question, it collapses a whole bunch of other questions around it, because it's coming at things from a completely different level than what we think where the problem is.
So let's give them a little bit of background why we asked this question.
Go ahead.
Okay, and you all may know, but David Icke, who I've never really followed religiously, I must say, okay? I watched an interview with him with this man called John Nolan. John spells his name Jean, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
And it was just an interview with David Icke about his latest book called The Dream. Okay, and we got it on Audible after. But The Dream really is David Icke going into the degree of matrix manipulation, okay? Even to the point of discussing the manipulation after we die. Okay, and so it's quite mind-blowing, I have to say. I mean, a lot of it I knew already, but somehow the way he says it just rattled my brain, okay? So we decided to ask Source a question about the matrix. So what's the question?
This question about the matrix.
Is there a matrix?
What does Source say about us being in a matrix, and how do we get free from it?
All right. So this will answer your question, Margaret, because your question is in the matrix, okay? Source was making a joke about it first and says, well, of course, didn't you watch the Matrix with Neo? Remember that movie?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, no, it's just kidding. Okay, hang on. So basically it's saying the Matrix, you have to remember, is an artificial construct. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, in other words, we just discussed love before being the field of all possibilities. Nothing can touch love. Love has no opposite. But so basically it's saying anything that's not that is an artificial construct. So you could call the Matrix a big artificial intelligence game. And the orchestrators of it have got really good at holographic insertions and technology. So does it appear to be real? Yes, but is it real? No. And this is the important answer, because it's saying, look, how do you get out of it is stop believing in it. Okay, stop believing you're affected by it, because you still have the divine spark of God within you. You can contact that spark anytime by focusing your attention on it. For example, before we got on the call, you know, I took Shirley's question and I was just sitting in the living room having my cup of coffee. And I just asked Source, so what would you say to that? And Source answered me immediately. I didn't have to go into the records for an answer. It just answered me immediately. And that's the point it's trying to make, that when you fall for artificial constructs as being more powerful than yourself, you put yourself at a big disadvantage. Because part of this waking up period we're going into is to shake ourselves out of this, as David Icke calls it, shake ourselves out of this dream and stop believing that all this stuff is so serious and that it affects you, because you live forever. So, like, what's the worst that could happen on this dimension is you might lose your physical body. Okay, but you live forever. So we kind of have to put things in perspective and stop being so attached to our physical selves, because that's where we think we can be injured. Okay, so can we stop the negative orchestrators? Yes, you can, if you understand that your consciousness, your pure consciousness, your unlimited possibilities. So as much as they're making up this whole hologram that we find ourselves in called 3D, you can make up any scenario you want as well. I mean, the only thing they've got over us is they have more technology, or more advanced technology. But what's more advanced than your divine being who has unlimited possibilities? So basically, its answer is don't be caught up in this stuff. Yes, you can look around and say, oh, you know, we're caught in this control, but we're only controlled if we think we're controlled. Okay, so in other words, Sources kind of telling us it's time to snap out of it. That's what this awakening is about, is start focusing on your divine self, establish your own communication with your own inner self, and don't be deceived by the manifestations of these guys who just want you to keep believing that you have no power and that you're in effect of all of their shenanigans. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah. No, I can't add anything more to that. That's beautiful and a great question.
I know what you're saying, and I take that completely on board. But we're kind of, while we're here being human, we're operating on that level as well. And I suppose for me, we saw what happened in Maui. What they've got planned next is bigger than that, and a lot of people are going to be all the, you know, the stuff that happened, people dying and the whole routine. And I suppose it's just I'm an overprotective old bag, and it's just I would love it not to happen and harm them, because it would be so emotionally destructive for so many people. And I guess that's what I was asking the question for, because most people don't understand the other level of stuff, and because while we're here being human, we kind of got to negotiate that because we're here.
Yes.
I mean, you know,
That's part of what the awakening is about, though, Margaret. Many people, don't forget, have contracted to leave this planet during this period. I don't want to go through this whole crap that we're going to go through. Okay.
I know.
So anyway, and there's just as many people that we've heard from Maui who have plans on rebuilding Maui. So we can't say that the negative agenda is going to win, because the human spirit has survived many, many cycles when they've tried this stuff. We're still here.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
know.
We have to remember that yes, we're in a human body, but we're still divinity as well. Divinity isn't someplace outside of us. It's
No.
within us. In fact, your natural divinity is your kundalini. You know, it's really the life force of God running up through your body. Okay, so we have to remember who we are. I mean, you know, we keep falling prey to our small selves. That's the deception. That's the trick. That's what they want you to believe.
Yeah. I remember when that tsunami hit Indonesia some years ago, and I can't remember the numbers, but there was a good few thousand, perhaps 8 or 10,000 people died. And it was catastrophic. And people were asking that same question, like, oh my God, the destruction. But when Aingeal Rose went into the Akashic records at that time and asked about those people, it was very clear that they chose to leave as a soul family at that point in time.
Yeah,
Perhaps,
and so with 9/11 as well. It's
yeah,
just the fallout from that with the people who are left behind. I always feel so sorry for them, and I suppose want to protect them from the pain. It's just me being an overprotective old bag, really.
Well, of course, we always, you know, every one of us is in grief about stuff that's happened on this planet. Every one of us has some sort of cellular memory of trauma. And I'm not saying don't feel that, because I feel it. I mean, I've gone through waves of it during this cycle too, realizing that we're shifting paradigms entirely. We're letting go of an old paradigm. But through that, you know, all my own memories of all the grief I've gone through in my life, you know, I've lost my mom, lost my sister, lost my brother, lost 2 partners. You know, it cycles around and gets to you. You know, so I just think the most you can do is you just have to feel it when it shows up, let it run itself through, and carry on.
Well, exactly. Yes. And I think that teaches, certainly in my case, it taught me empathy and compassion.
right.
Some of those tragedies is what got me asking some questions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What would I have done if they didn't happen to
In
me?
fact, isn't that what we just had a workshop here last weekend, psychic laser therapy, and Aingeal Rose says every time that we do that workshop that when you see what's going on in people's energy fields, which you do through that therapy, was it the way you worded, Aingeal Rose?
Nobody's the way they are without a reason.
Nobody's the way they are without a reason. Yeah, and it's embedded into our like energetic makeup. Yeah. Okay. All right, Francis, you're up next. You got a question?
Yeah. Okay. My question. What is man's purpose in the spirit realm? Is it to go to the highest dimension, like love, or to live with Jesus, or go back to earth, the earth plane?
Good question.
Oh boy. Mankind's highest spiritual purpose is to realize that you're one with God. You're one with the universe. Okay, you are the all that is. Okay, and the highest level. So we're going way beyond dimensions, Francis, because dimensions are an artificial construct as well. Because the truth is that we're all unlimited universal consciousness. Okay, which is love. The goal isn't to be one with Jesus. You may spend time with Jesus in your journey, okay, but the goal isn't to be with Jesus. Jesus has its own soul and is doing its own thing, but that's all religious stuff, okay, and this is way beyond religion. So to imagine yourself as one with the universe is the highest level you could go to, because you are back at home at in that situation. You're back one with your divinity, with yourself, with the all that is. Okay. You know what? We're not really here to reincarnate either, even though we do it because some authority figure told us to do it from the other side. But that's not necessarily true either. We don't have to come back here. We can choose to be wherever we want once we leave this plane. We just have to have our wits about us and know that we can choose that. So people come back in because maybe they want to continue a lifetime they had here. You know, people meet soulmates for that reason. Usually finish something they were doing before, either to heal it or to continue it, for example, or to complete it. I mean, they come back in to do those things, but do they have to do those things? No. It's something they're choosing to do as a soul. So reincarnation isn't a given that it's something that you have to do. It's something you choose to do for your own reasons. Like Ahonu and I know each other from out of this physical universe entirely. And we knew that when we met each other. Okay, this is a spiritual recognition and connection. So we know we're here to do just what we're doing now. During this time where people need to wake up and we need to wake up, we have stuff to clear as well. But there really isn't any religion that can tell you the truth of anything, because every one of them thinks that they're the truth. Okay, and every one of them has their own rules. And I've seen the advantages, disadvantages of religions. For example, my parents were very, very Catholic. And my brother died in a car crash when he was 22 years old. And that ruined my mother. I mean, she just never recovered from that. And in her consciousness, she couldn't understand why somebody who followed her religion, who said her rosary every day and prayed, that God could take her son from her. And she just couldn't make sense of that, you know? Well, the truth is because God didn't take her son from her. I mean, my brother had his own contract that he was doing. But they interpret it as they must be terribly bad or guilty, okay, if something like that happened to them. And that's where religions ruin you. You know, I watched that happen with my father too. You know, I asked him one time, because I took an article writing class in college once, and one of my assignments was I had to interview somebody. So I decided I'd interview my dad, because the truth is I never knew him before he was my dad. And I asked him, what kind of conclusions did he come to about my brother's death? And what he said to me was, oh, I'm just worried that he went to hell because he had sex with a woman before he was married. I was just so blown away by that answer that I thought, oh my God, that's what you got out of losing your son, was he was going to be judged because he had sex with a woman? I mean, that's how ridiculous it is, put it bluntly. Okay, so that's my answer to those questions. You're universal consciousness. Mm-hmm. That's what you are. You're all that is. You're beyond every belief system, every dimension. You're just a being of love, and that's who you are. That's what we wake up to. That's what the goal is.
Okay. Thank you.
In that, there's no guilt, there's no shame, there's no punishment, there's no judgment. There's none of that.
Okay.
I mean, even asking this matrix question, to me, it's very freeing when Source says to you, it's all made up, so why are you deciding to believe in it? You know, and it was kind of like somebody hitting you across the head saying, wake up. And we do have to remember that, because we aren't in touch with our power. We haven't even been able to accept that we're love without any sort of guilt attached to it, okay? But it's very freeing to know that it's just a choice.
Okay, great. Do we want to chance going around again real quick? There would have to be quick questions and quick answers, because we've only got like 10 minutes left. Do you want to have a go at it, Terry? You got a quick question?
I do have something for Aingeal, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but just to follow up to something that you said, your other two partners, were they also twin flames?
One of them was a lesser twin, and I'll explain that in a minute. And one of them was a soulmate. So like my first husband was a soulmate. Okay, so he was somebody that I lived other lives with, that we met each other again when we were in our teens. And that was a completion lifetime. The other partner I had was a lesser twin, the one who committed suicide. You know, the difference is that you know it by the energy. Okay, for example, twins can have different degrees. So if you picture a clock face, the primary twin, the original twin, is at a 12-6 position. That's what we are. And then you have offshoots of yourselves, which makes it a 3-9 twin. Like I've met another man earlier in my life who was a lesser twin. He was a guy who lived across the street that my son used to cut grass for. And that was a lesser twin. In fact, I've met two lesser twins, actually. 3, actually. Keith was a lesser twin.
You're pushing through them, aren't you?
But I just think that was my, like I had to go through soulmates that I had to complete with. I had to go through lesser twins before I could meet Ahonu, because he's my primary twin. Did I answer her question with this?
You did, yeah. In fact, you know, rather than spending time on that right now, you should know that we have done a course in the past on twin flames and soulmates and how to tell the difference. And we will, I think, run one of those again, perhaps in the new year. So we will let you know about that.
You know, suffice it to say that when you meet a twin, you recognize that being as the same as you. There isn't any separation. Where a soulmate, you're aware that they're a distinct being who you've lived other lives with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes there's competition with the soulmate, whereas there's just union with the twin. So that's one way of knowing.
But not all twins, when they meet each other, they don't always choose to be with each other. And the reason they don't is because they have other issues in the way.
Yeah.
Because you can't hide when you meet a twin. There's no hiding. There's no secrets. There's no, none of that. Okay.
Diane, do you have something?
Yes, I would like to ask about my, I've been traveling a lot on the road and noticing a lot of the road being torn up, but it doesn't look like it's being worked on. And I've traveled across the US a lot and I'm seeing the same scenario. So my question is there a reason for that, or that, you know, are they trying to, you know, kind of lock us in?
Good question.
No, I don't get that. What I'm getting is that there's a problem with supply chains. In other words, you know, as you may have noticed, being told that lumber, for example, has gone sky high in prices, right? Didn't you see that too? Even a piece of plywood that used to cost XYZ. So all of those things that have gone into repair, all those prices have gone through the roof, and some of them, they can't get supplies when they need them. So you have periods where workers are just off doing something else because they can't complete what they're doing. So I don't see anything sinister in it. I just think it's a supply chain issue. Because we see that here too in Sedona. Remember how, like, they've been working on this one road the whole summer. And it's not a big road.
Yeah, and clearly it shouldn't be the case because it causes so much backlogs and traffic problems and so on that they normally have cleared in. They would have done the whole job start to finish maybe in 3 or 4 weeks. It's been going on all summer. So it's not that they're trying to purposely cause these traffic jams.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to see that come to a head also probably within the next year or two, because this stuff can't stand before it starts to fall down. So so some of that whole supply chain thing is what's orchestrated basically to kind of make us dependent on other things. But it's hit the construction industry, it's hit the car industry, blah, 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 you know?
Okay. Shirley, quick question.
I just wanted to make a comment how wonderful the information has been today. It's been very uplifting and heartwarming. So thank you, everyone.
Super. Good. Okay, Marie?
I just want to comment what Shirley Janine said. Oh, it's been wonderful. I love the information and I love all the questions today, but it's getting so close to the time, you know, we can go on to somebody else if you want to.
Okay.
I know that they can come back and be with us again, cats and dogs that we've been really close to. But I've also read somewhere that sometimes they are kind of like part of us, like a split off from us that's come to be with us and share part of life with us. Do you have any view on that?
Can you repeat that?
Domestic pets, are they part of us?
Some of them are actual, you know, soulmates that you've known in other lives when they weren't animals. Okay, some of them are lifetimes you've lived when you were an animal. So they do have a connection to you energetically. Absolutely. Okay. And I know somebody once, I think I told you this, maybe the story, that I had a friend who had a pet pig, right? And she just loved this pet pig. And she asked me in a reading who the pig was to her, because she had this uncanny love for this pig.
Yeah.
Remember?
And the husband in that relationship was actually a butcher. And they
I
had
know,
this pet pig
Oh yeah, they
in
had
the
a
house.
they had a
Seriously.
restaurant that was
Yeah.
barbecued pork and everything.
Yeah. That was a crazy.
But anyway, the pig, turned out the pig had been her grandfather in a different lifetime when there was a fire.
Oh,
So this pig was back into her life because its nose is close to the ground and it can pick up the scent of fire if there were to be a fire. So it came back as a protector for her against fire.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting.
And there's a beautiful cat walking across Marie's screen. Francis, do you have a final question?
So in your podcast, you said near-death experiences are still influenced by authority figures that urge individuals to return. So who are some of the authority figures? You know, can just give one example and why?
Nobody in particular, but I would include those beings as part of the control agenda that wants to send you back and tell you that you still have stuff to work on. When the truth is you could, if you had your wits about you, you could just, I always think of Peter Pan, that image, where the kids are, Peter Pan's flying out the window and he's taking Wendy and the boy with him. And he's saying first start of the, what was it? First start of the right or something, You got to think of that when you leave this world, that you can go directly home to God's source. You don't have to pass go. You don't have to collect $200. You can just go straight. But we don't know that, you see.
Yeah.
So we think anybody on the other side has to be more intelligent and more advanced than us. But that's not exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really a whole lesson in discrimination and knowing who you are and what you have a right to do.
Okay. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Right.
So let me do a quick recap of what we've covered here today. Margaret loves this part. Terry started off with the questions about the mermaids. That was absolutely super. And I'm glad you asked that question, Terry. Aingeal Rose mentioned that they're an ancient race, not a genetic modification, part of the ocean, that they live in tunnels and deep caves under the ocean, and that they communicate through the wind, which is interesting. And also then she asked in her second round about twins. And I did promise that we will do a course in the new year on twin flames and soulmates. Diane asked about porn. Again, all these questions are really super and thank you for them. Pornography and how it affects the planet. And Aingeal Rose replied that it's an addictive form of implantation that sucks energy and siphons off energy for the negative agenda. And it gives expression to people's shadow selves. And then her second round of question was about the roads being torn up. And we find that that's more or less just a supply chain issue. There's not anything sinister going on about that. Shirley's question was about love and the definition of love. And we found that that's the field of all possibilities. That love, sorry, I'm doing a...
He's doing a cleanse and he's on the hour. He's got to drink his swill.
I got to drink swill on the art. That was a little reminder. So sorry about that interruption. That love is all sound. Oh yeah, she asked about the sound of love in the new earth. And love is all sound. All sounds come from love. We will reconcile the new earth by our changing perceptions, and love will be demonstrated more and more in the new earth. Marie asked about how do we receive energy from God so we don't have to eat, and Aingeal Rose pointed her to the book by Ray Mayor. We have a copy of it here too. Actually, remind me, I'll put a link to that, link to Ray Mayor.
In his YouTube video. So.
And the YouTube video, yeah. And the answer is yes, it is possible, but requires undoing all belief systems about it, about food, about our need for food, about the way energy works in our body and so on. And that everything is belief, and that by being able to not depend on food, it does lead to high spiritual experiences. Kim asked about hereditary and genetic illnesses, and Aingeal Rose replied that yes, but behind it all is emotional trauma. And then we told you the story about when a warrior falls, and we will send you the link to that video too. Ellen asked about the fear of starvation, very valid fear indeed. And in this situation, oh no, Aingeal Rose mentioned about the Course in Miracles. And the question to ask is, in the situation involving my fear of starvation, I am afraid that blank, blank, blank
will
happen. And then what you do is you list what you're afraid of. And then you say, but I choose peace instead of this. And we have used that to great effect ourselves. Very, very good advice. Margaret's question really stirred up a pot of real trouble when she asked about the matrix, as she always does. And
she didn't ask about the matrix, she asked about something that's going to happen in the
to do with the matrix, yeah. But your answer was about the fact that it is an artificial construct. It's not love. It's a big artificial intelligence game using AI plus technology. And to stop it, you simply stop believing in it. And when you fall for artificial constructs, you make it appear to be stronger than you are, when in fact it's not. What's more advanced than our own divine being is the question that Aingeal Rose asked. And we keep falling for our small self. We all have cellular memory of trauma, and that's what makes it difficult, but we keep falling for it. In her second round of questions, she asked about domestic pets, and that they are part of us. And yes, they do have a strong energetic connection to us. Francis asked about man's purpose in the spirit realm, and mankind's purpose is to realize that we are the all that is. Dimensions are an artificial construct. You may spend time with Jesus, but that's not the goal. The goal is to be one with the universe. That's the goal of humanity. And reincarnation is not something you have to do. It is something we choose to do. And then she mentioned about religions, that there is no religion that has the truth of everything. We are all universal consciousness. We are beings of love. And this is what we need to remember. And finally, she finished with the fact that there is no guilt, no shame, no judgment, other than what we impose upon ourselves. So that brings us to the end of our session today. I am so thrilled with those great questions, and thrilled that you guys are here to ask them, because as we have found before, and you may have heard us mention before, it is your energy that brings out the kinds of answers from the Akashic records. It's your individual qualities that help to fine-tune and downstep these answers, and they help us all. So we really appreciate you turning up for these sessions.
We just want to tell you all real quick that we're doing these cleansing programs. And I want to tell you about this company only because they are just so fantastic. But it's a company out of Thailand. And the name of them is Zen Cleanse. Okay, it's ZENCLEANZ. Okay, and they make these beautiful cleanses, like Ahonu's doing the liver cleanse right now. It's a 1-day cleanse. I'm doing the kidney cleanse, which is 30-day cleanse. Okay, but all of their products are fermented enzymes that they've been fermenting for 3 to 5 years, all from plants and vegetables. And you know, when you get their products, you look at just the packaging is beautiful. You know, can you see that?
But there's something
that's my kidney cleanse package right here.
There's something I want to point out about it, though, that just inside the package.
Read it.
That's what I'm going to read. Just inside.
Stay with us for a couple of minutes, just so you get an idea what this company is like.
Yeah.
It's not a multi-level marketing thing or anything. They just make cleanses. Okay.
There's a flyer just inside the box, and I'll read to you what it says. It says, "We have reached the time of awakening and initiated our walk back home from ages of confusion and anguish. Clarity is now rising above darkness as we retrieve our divine purity. We remember our sovereignty. We understand that it is all a dream and that we are the dream, naturally calm, gentle, generous, Our loving power is infinite. We are consciously ready for a peaceful ride through eternity. So that's the kind of concept that they're coming from. And it's why we really love not only the product, but the effect of the product as well. So we're doing all their cleanses. We will send you the link to those as well.
You can look at them yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, they're really awesome though. And because I ended up in the hospital twice this half of the year, I just decided, well, because they wanted to put me on all these different medicines, and I had asked Source for something healthy that would help me instead and do the same thing but be healthy. And one of the products we got, because we signed up for this, we bought this bottle of stuff called mycelium, wasn't it? Mycelia. It's all made from fermented mushrooms. And one of the things my blood work always shows me is high cholesterol, high triglycerides, yada, 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 right? So they wanted me on statins, which I didn't do. But anyway, just from drinking a little bit of this stuff, I think it lasted us a couple of weeks, right? Because we both were doing it. I went and had blood work for another doctor I have to see, but all my triglyceride levels are normal. Most of my cholesterols, except one, had come down to normal, which is crazy, okay? Just from this, drinking this fermented mushrooms. So we can't say enough about them. That's all. We just want to tell you, if you want to clean yourself out, that's great, okay?
We'll send you that.
Like Ahonu's been to the bathroom. I mean, this all morning. This liver,
that's enough info.
this liver cleanse, you know, gets rid of gallstones and all.
That's enough. We've come to the end of our session today.
Let me say the prayer to close. And don't forget at 12:15 we have this.
Yeah, in 5
For
minutes.
any students of the Akashic Record course, if you have questions, we'll be online and you can ask them if you need to.
Yeah,
okay.
That's 5 minutes now. It's a different link. We'll find it in the World of Empowerment events page. You'll see the link in there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Bye.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Love you. Love you.